Chapter 27. The Implications of Communion. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 23 to 33. All things are lawful for me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Whatsoever is sold in the shambles, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. But if any man say unto you, This is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. Conscience, I say, not thine own, but of the other. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that which I give thanks? Whether therefore ye eat, or drink, or whatsoever ye do all to the glory of God. Give none offence, neither to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God. Even as I please all men, in all things, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Paul returns once again to the matter of food offered to idols. He repeats the statement of 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. All things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient or profitable. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Since God is the creator of all things, and all things were made good, Genesis chapter 1, verse 31, there is nothing on earth that is of itself evil. It is the use thereof that is evil. Our sexuality can be good or evil depending on our use of it, not in and of itself. It is the act, the expression of man's will and mind that sets the moral character. Man, as God's image bearer, Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 to 28, must not make himself subject to his mind or appetites. He must be in charge under God. Now, in repeating the maxim used by the Corinthians, Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 23, alters his comments, saying, All things are lawful for me, but all things edify not. Earlier, he had said that lawless use could be made of lawful things. Now he alters or expands that to say that even if the use is not lawless, it may not edify or build us up. We are not our own, he had concluded earlier, having been bought with a price by Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 19 and 20. Therefore, let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. Verse 24. In so stating it, Paul, in this matter of meat offered to idols, of the strong and the weak, is tying to the fact of communion. They are now members of one another, and they cannot act as though their lives are unrelated to the Christian community. Paul then says, Whatsoever is sold in the shambles, that is what the meat market was called, that eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Verse 25. The idols are nothing. The sacrifices are nothing in and of themselves. In fact, some butchers only burned a few hairs of the slaughtered animal as a formality of sacrifice. To ask questions was to take the matter too seriously. It was not the butcher's act, but their own mindset that was important. The basic premise is set forth in Psalm 24, verse 1. The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. What God has made cannot pollute us unless wrongly used. Neither the butcher nor the pagan priest created the sacrificial animal. God did, and it is God who determines the lawful use thereof. The priority in and sum total of all meaning is determined by God, not by the creature. Verse 26. Then Paul says in verse 27, If any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, and ye be disposed to go, whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. The reference can be to an invitation to a pagan neighbour's house or to some community dinner. Whatever is served, one should eat, asking no questions, for conscience sake. The meaning is that we are to raise no questions of conscience because we know that the idols are nothing. Then Paul adds in verse 28, If any man say unto you, This is offered in sacrifice unto idols, eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake. For the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof. The question raised is by a weaker Christian who is also a guest. We should not use our liberty to hurt a weak brother. We should remember that, because the earth is the Lord's, we cannot view the eating of meat sacrificed to idols from the perspective of either the strong or the weak, but from the requirements of God the Lord. Verses 29 and 30 are very interesting. Conscience, I say, not thine own, but of the other. For why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? For if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that which I give thanks? Paul here makes two statements which are in seeming opposition. First, beginning at verse 28, Paul calls for abstaining from eating such meats when a question is raised out of regard for his weaker brother. Second, he insists on his Christian liberty to eat even as he abstains, because he partakes by grace. He gives thanks to the living God, not to idols. So, why am I evil spoken of for that for which I give thanks? Paul concedes nothing to the weak, even as he abstains from eating such meats. In terms of this, he adds, Whether therefore ye eat or drink or whatsoever ye do all to the glory of God. Verse 31. Nothing is conceded to the weak. Abstinence on a particular occasion goes hand in hand with an insistence on the doctrine Paul sets forth, namely, that idols are nothing, and the meat is a provision from God, not from the idol. The glory of God is the issue, not what one does with food set before him. This, the weaker brother must not obscure. We face a like issue in this century where liquor is concerned. Many see it as radically ungodly to drink beer, wine, or hard liquor. They have falsely exalted the matter of abstinence into a theological issue. This they must not be allowed to do. On the other hand, it is equally wrong to go to extremes of provocation and cause serious problems to the weak. As a general rule, Paul concludes, Give none offence, neither to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles, nor to the church of God. Verse 32. It is not only weaker Christians we must avoid offending, but Jews and Greeks as well. Our purpose must not be destructive, but constructive. There is no merit in being offensive, no virtue in compelling people to see their faith desecrated. This neither builds up nor saves anyone. Charles Hodge observed, The first great principle of Christian conduct is to promote the glory of God. The second is to avoid giving offence or causing men to sin. In other words, love to God and love to men should govern our conduct. Paul concludes, Even as I please all men in all things, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. Verse 33. Paul does not alter his private attitudes to determine his ministry because he is Christ's ambassador and must only represent Jesus Christ. In this, he adds, Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. Thus, in the question of the weak and the strong, the determination can be by neither, nor by the church, but only by Jesus Christ. We are to be his followers, not the followers of men, except in their obedience to the Lord. It is Christ and his law word which must prevail. Our communion one with another must begin with our communion with Him. He is the Lord,